Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named Sanctuary Season 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins with a man opening the box on the table and taking a bite. Inside was a tender, juicy, unknown creature. It tasted great, clearly top-notch stuff. The man was an alien disguised among humans. Dr. Helen had sent the box. Her daughter Ashley had been kidnapped by the Cabal a month ago. She hoped to get some clues from the man. The Cabal was a dark and powerful organization focused on controlling all alien life on Earth. They had released an alien virus in the Snowy Mountains a month ago. Infected aliens would become irritable and eventually die in excruciating pain. Hearing that Helen was trying to gather information about the Cabal, the man quickly shut the box in fear. He remained tight-lipped about Ashley's whereabouts. Helen's ex-husband, John, suddenly appeared to flex his shining, bald head and pinned the man in a corner. The man had nowhere to run. He reluctantly revealed that Ashley had been transformed into a monster by the Cabal and was hidden in their most inaccessible place. Even if she were found, she would be nothing more than a walking corpse. The scene shifted to a database in Montreal. Ashley, missing for a month, finally appeared. She quickly flashed in, dismantled 2 data storage units, and disappeared. It seemed the Cabal had completely taken over her mind. The Cabal and Helen's alien sanctuary had always been arch-enemies. The latter was dedicated to protecting aliens around the world. Tesla had developed a new drug that finally controlled the spreading virus. However, their power was far inferior to that of the Cabal. Helen and John interrogated everyone who might know something but found nothing, plunging the old couple into despair. Meanwhile, at the sanctuary, Will and Henry received news of the database attack. This database belonged to Interpol, and over 200 GB of data had been stolen. Being able to flash in and out of such a heavily guarded place, only Ashley could have done it. Will rushed to the attacked database. Fortunately, there were backup files of the stolen data. The staff cooperated and handed the copies to Will. Besides the sanctuary, no one else could investigate who stole the data. The staff repeatedly reviewed the surveillance footage, unable to believe that a person could just vanish into thin air. Understandably, these muggles were stunned by such supernatural phenomena. Will spent several days and nights reviewing the backup data. It all revolved around a mysterious project called Montana. This project began 25 years ago when the government modified the DNA of 6 orphans to fix their genetic defects, making them incredibly strong. However, the experiment was deemed unethical and was quickly halted. But why did the Cabal suddenly want to steal the data so long after the experiment ended? The good news was that Ashley was still alive. Stealing the data was just an appetizer. Recently transformed, her consciousness was still unstable, occasionally recalling past events. The Cabal needed to perform more systematic brainwashing on her. The second wave of serum was injected into her sexy body. To understand what the Cabal had done to Ashley, they needed to uncover the main content of the Montana project. 25 years ago, the government took 6 orphans and repaired their DNA, perfecting it. After the project was halted, the orphans were quickly adopted by different families. By now, these orphans would be in their 30s. Clearly, this project contained experimental data the Cabal needed. At the end of the previous season, the Cabal not only kidnapped Ashley, but also stole a powerful vampire serum. Injecting this serum would grant ordinary people unparalleled abilities. The scene shifted to Ashley. She was covered in tubes, enduring repeated suffocation in a water tank. Rebirth was painful, yet astonishing. Ashley's self-awareness wavered. After some modifications, she grew bone claws, but her body was uncontrollable. She couldn't kill the scientists or escape that damned place. It seemed the brainwashing wasn't thorough enough. Once again, Ashley was thrown into the water tank. Large amounts of drugs and serums were injected into her body repeatedly. Ashley gradually lost herself under its influence. Will received news that of the 6 orphans whose genes had been altered, 4 had mysteriously disappeared. They must have been taken by the Cabal. The remaining 2 orphans lived in the UK and Canada. John flashed to the UK and found one of the orphans. Helen and Will went to the home of the second orphan. A casually dressed woman welcomed them warmly. As soon as they entered, Will noticed something was wrong. The place was full of signs of a struggle. The woman, Kate, was actually working with the Cabal and had already kidnapped the second orphan. Realizing the danger, Kate hurriedly drove away with Helen and her team in hot pursuit. After an exciting car chase, they finally intercepted Kate, but the trunk was empty. The kidnapped orphan had long been transferred by the Cabal. Kate claimed she wasn't a Cabal lackey, but just a bounty hunter. She would do anything if the price was right, from kidnapping to dog walking or delivering food. Seeing that Helen wasn't cruel, Kate remained defiant. She refused to say a word about the Cabal, daring them to shoot her. Helen did fire a shot. Never underestimate what a mother who has lost her child is capable of. If not for Will's intervention, Kate might have confessed on the spot. Helen's emotions had been negatively influenced by spending so much time with John. With no information from the woman, they had to search elsewhere, leaving technician Henry to guard her. Henry, munching on chocolate, was unmoved by Kate's sweet talk. Kate pleaded for some chocolate, and Henry reluctantly gave her a piece. A chicken scream came from the warehouse, suggesting that Kate had escaped like a fast chicken. A bounty hunter indeed, full of tricks. With Henry as a teammate, success seemed distant. 5 orphans had been taken by the Cabal, but they still had 1 orphan at control. Her DNA was flawless, perfect to the extreme. They realized the Cabal might be using super serum to turn these orphans into perfect super soldiers. Ashley, with her extraordinary talents, would undoubtedly become the strongest. The scene shifted to Kate after her escape. She called the Cabal's contact, demanding her payment for delivering the orphans. The Cabal, despicable as ever, not only withheld her payment but also tried to kill her. Kate, narrowly escaping with her life, had no choice but to seek help from the sanctuary. After treatment, the severely injured Kate was out of danger. The Cabal was hunting her, and she had nowhere to go. Despite this, she still refused to talk. Her body was weak, but her smelly mouth was strong. Realizing Helen might throw her heavy body out, Kate finally disclosed the Cabal's experiment location. It was in a desolate area on the U.S. border. Though cunning, Kate wasn't inherently bad. Without delay, Helen organized a team. John could teleport, Tesla was an immortal, powerful vampire, and poor Will, a mere mortal, had to risk his shitty life alongside them. They arrived at the Cabal's warehouse, but it was deserted. Helen realized they had fallen into a trap. Ashley suddenly appeared. A moment meant for a touching mother-daughter reunion turned eerie. Ashley had changed, unrecognizable and immensely powerful. Her teleportation skills were beyond even her father John's. She attacked Tesla brutally, then tried to kill her mother. Ashley was invulnerable, healing instantly from bullets. John realized none of them could defeat Ashley and quickly retreated with the team. No matter how much Helen yearned for her daughter, she had to accept that the sweet Ashley was gone, replaced by a modified hybrid, a soulless killing machine. One Ashley wasn't enough for the Cabal. They transformed the other 5 orphans into similar mutant warriors. The 6 killing machines, devoid of any familial ties, marched towards the sanctuary, ready to destroy Helen's defenses and eliminate all obstacles in their path. They can teleport instantly, move with incredible speed, possess immense strength, and are nearly invulnerable to blades and bullets. Even immortal vampires are no match for them. When they appear together, their combined power is cataclysmic. The scene shifts to a deeply worried Helen, who knows the Cabal is targeting her and calls their leader to negotiate. The Cabal leader's demands are simple: hand over the sanctuary or face obliteration by the mutant warriors. What Helen can't accept is that the lead super soldier is her own daughter. After being captured by the Cabal, Ashley was brainwashed with drugs, erasing all her memories. Her daughter, now unrecognizable, is bent on killing her. As the mutant army approaches, Helen gathers her team to devise a strategy. They must use every available resource to defend against the attack. Meanwhile, the war has already begun out of sight. On the Cabal leader's command, the mutant army first reaches the Tokyo branch of the sanctuary. The sky roars as the 6 warriors make a dramatic entrance. In just 20 minutes, the Tokyo branch falls completely. The branch leader informs Helen that the mutants are unstoppable. The sanctuary's electronic shields are useless against them. They move with precision, violently breaking through defenses and kidnapping people. Helen is thrust into an unprepared war. Soon, another message arrives. The Moscow branch has also fallen, with heavy casualties among the sanctuary staff and all aliens. Hearing about the sanctuary's plight, Will's new girlfriend joins the fight using her invisible body. She's great, but her powers are unstable. She can only turn invisible if she sees a naked man. Before every mission, Will has to strip in front of her. Over time, this routine brings them closer. After devastating all the branches, the mutant army finally reaches Helen's headquarters. They easily kick down the steel doors and breach the shields as if it were child's play. Waiting for them are 4 trembling soldiers and the mighty Grey Giant. The battle is imminent. Bullets are useless against the mutants, and within a minute, the soldiers are overwhelmed. Even the Grey Giant falls under Ashley's assault. Seeing the dire situation, John steps up as the second line of defense. Wielding twin blades, he slashes at Ashley, leaving her covered in wounds that quickly heal. Undeterred, John charges forward, targeting their weak spots with relentless stabs. But he is outnumbered, and his daughter fights to kill. With no need to hold back, he stabs Ashley in the heart. However, such an injury only temporarily halts her attack. Realizing the hopelessness, John retreats to save his bald life. Ashley, now healed, leads the mutant army towards the central database. Will stands in their path, releasing sticky venom that entangles and immobilizes the enemies, turning them into statues. Just as he's feeling triumphant, Ashley's men arrive and shatter the Venom's hold with a single punch. Now it's Will's turn to flee for his shitty life again. Meanwhile, Tesla had completed assembling the weapon to combat the mutant army. He handed the weapon to Helen and then stood guard at the database alone. Watching Ashley turn against Helen, Tesla felt heartbroken. He pulled out high-voltage wires, sparking and crackling with electricity that made Ashley scream in agony. The immense power would have vaporized an ordinary person, yet Ashley continued to advance under the high voltage. Tesla was drenched in sweat, astonished by Ashley's endurance, which even he couldn't withstand. On the other side, Will, with the help of his invisible girlfriend, managed to escape safely. This was the last line of defense. His girlfriend insisted Will retreat first, while she delayed the army's advance. The team regrouped in the main lab, where only 3 out of the 6 mutant warriors remained. Helen fired an air cannon at them, stunning them momentarily, but they recovered in less than a minute. Helen had to fire another shot. Their resilience rendered most attacks ineffective. Helen had no choice but to activate the upgraded electromagnetic shield. The massive electrical discharges caused the mutants' vital signs to plummet. If this continued, they would be annihilated. The Cabal leader watched the data on the screen and reluctantly ordered a retreat. After the battle, the sanctuary was in ruins, but they had defended their final line. Will's invisible girlfriend was killed, leaving him single once more. Although they repelled the first wave of attacks, it was clear the Cabal wouldn't give up easily. When the mutant army returns, what will they do next? Helen decided to release the Cabal's pawn, Kate. Despite her mischievous nature, Helen couldn't bear to leave her behind to die. They evacuated all alien residents, including deep-sea mermaids, reptilians, and the fire-spewing Avenging Flame. Many residents were reluctant to leave, wanting to stay and fight. Helen didn't want to see more aliens die in this war. They were just seeking refuge. Among the residents was their friend, the furry mutant, who had contracted an alien virus. Fearful of rejection by his kind if he used human medicine, he preferred to die rather than take the antidote. In his mind, he was an alien, and taking the medicine would make him more human. Helen left him the antidote, leaving the choice of survival or death to him. That night, everyone was deeply moved. After fighting side by side for so long, they watched friends and loved ones die one by one. What pained Helen the most was her daughter turning against her. Despite her love for Ashley, she had to admit that her daughter was long gone, replaced by an emotionless killing machine. The Cabal's attack came faster than expected. They hacked into the Sanctuary's network, disabling the powerful shield. Without protection, Ashley and her comrades teleported to the central lab, their last line of defense. Henry quickly hid under a table, narrowly escaping. They moved through the lab to Helen's living quarters, where she held a high-powered ultrasonic cannon, taking out enemies one by one. Meanwhile, Tesla and John encountered 3 mutant warriors. A fierce battle ensued, with John teleporting the enemies from place to place. Will opened the elevator to find 2 enemies waiting. At the critical moment, the furry mutant appeared to flex his furry face, saving Will's life. Apparently, the furry mutant had taken the antidote and joined the fight. With the shield down, Henry sneaked into the lab to manually reactivate it. The mutants relentlessly pursued him, but Tesla intervened, buying Henry time to escape at great personal cost. Thankfully, Tesla's wounds healed quickly, given he was an immortal vampire. Henry and their group reached the lab. The damaged shield took a long time to repair, and the team was struggling. Helen tried to reach her daughter's mind, but Ashley struck her, leaving Helen gravely injured. Helen spoke of Ashley's childhood, her eyes full of sorrow. Ashley seemed briefly touched, but then thoughts of killing her mother flashed through her mind. At the crucial moment, Kate appeared and shot Ashley. The mutants reached the lab, and Will fought desperately to buy Henry time. Finally, the shield was reactivated, turning the mutants to ash instantly. Any teleporting beings would vaporize. Despite this, the mutants had countless ways to kill Helen. As Helen faced imminent danger, Ashley regained her senses. She grabbed her men and teleported into the shield, shattering into onion pieces. The smoke cleared, leaving behind a long-lasting sorrow and pain. Helen watched as her once-lost daughter died, saving her. The deep, piercing pain was beyond comprehension. The scene shifts to a massive cargo bay door slowly opening, revealing a sight to behold: 20 full crates of alien refugees. Leading the pack was a winged bug man, whose appearance left much to be desired and who was an insufferable chatterbox. These aliens, hiding among humans, were inherently kind-hearted and only sought a place to shelter them from the dangers. The sanctuary served as their haven. Will and Henry had the daunting task of organizing these 20 crates of aliens, labeling them and transporting them to their sanctuary. After days of long, arduous travel, these little creatures were irritable and struggling to adapt to their new environment. Some even had upset stomachs, leaving Will covered in alien excrement. Back to the sanctuary, the newcomer Kate glanced at her blood-stained pants from a recent injury and casually tossed them into the trash. She was a wandering bounty hunter, nearly recovered from her injuries, and it was time to leave this boring place. Despite her pretty face, her room was a mess. Having lived off the sanctuary for so long, she felt a bit obligated to help out before leaving. Among the new arrivals was a rare pointed-nosed dolphin, but unfortunately the last one had succumbed to the stress of the journey. Its tusks were worth a fortune on the black market, and Kate couldn't resist the temptation. She sneaked into the morgue, pliers in hand, ready to extract the valuable tusks. Just then, the dead dolphin unexpectedly sprayed a small, unidentified object, covering Kate in sticky goo. To her surprise, a chubby little creature emerged, struggling to stand. It turned out the dolphin had left behind a baby, which was far more valuable than its tusks. However, the little creature had short legs, but ran incredibly fast like a Tesla bike. Turning to Henry and the furry mutant, they were discussing how to accommodate the refugee aliens. The annoying bugman kept chattering, making it impossible to work. It turned out he had his eyes on a piece of chocolate on the table, enough to last him a week. Kate, having lost the baby dolphin, confessed the truth to Henry. The little creature not only ran off, but also spat in her face. Soon after, a scientist discovered the baby dolphin, starving and sneaking into Kate's room to eat a leftover burger. He was worried, noting that junk food could cause early development in the creature. The baby dolphin bit the scientist and dashed off again on its short legs. The group of 3 debated how to catch the elusive baby dolphin. The scientist mentioned that pointed-nosed dolphins from the Yangtze River particularly liked a rare type of bamboo. Kate, however, argued that a dolphin used to eating burgers wouldn't go for bamboo. Sure enough, the baby dolphin went for the burger Kate threw out. The scientist set a trap, but it failed, and the baby dolphin escaped into the ventilation ducts, chewing through the filter and fleeing the sanctuary. This was a disaster. The creature would undoubtedly cause chaos in the human world. Henry had no choice but to seek Kate's help. She was responsible for this mess and also an experienced bounty hunter. So Kate demanded a steep price, 2 tusks from the baby dolphin. With no room to negotiate, Henry reluctantly agreed. Before long, Kate received news that the baby dolphin had caused a commotion in a burger joint. The kitchen was in disarray with monster tracks everywhere. Judging by the size, the creature had grown considerably. This story reminds the audience not to eat too much junk food. It really can accelerate growth. Monsters typically build a nest after eating to rest. Soon, they received news of a worker attacked in the sewer. They headed to a sewer where fresh fries were scattered on the ground, indicating they were in the right place. Once they caught the baby dolphin, they needed to break its junk food habit. Although Kate had agreed not to shoot the dolphin, she secretly replaced the tranquilizer with live ammunition. To her, even a dead dolphin would fetch a good price on the black market. Such a heartless woman wouldn't last more than 3 episodes in this series. After just a few hours apart, it had grown so much. They engaged in a fierce battle in the foul-smelling sewer. As the little dolphin was about to pounce, Henry arrived just in time, scaring it off. It had grown bigger, stronger, and impervious to weapons. The 2 of them stumbled back in fear. By accident, they stumbled upon the monster's lair. Here, Kate found the smelly underwear she had lost long ago, indicating that the little dolphin liked collecting trash. The monster roared like a goose, getting closer and closer, forcing them into a dead end with no way out. Henry felt something was off. Why did the little dolphin take only Kate's stinky pants? It had plenty of chances to kill Kate earlier, so why didn't it? Suddenly, Henry understood. He holstered his gun. The little dolphin launched an attack but didn't harm Kate. It turned out that Kate was the first person the little dolphin saw after it was born, so it saw her as its mother. It ate her food and stole her clothes. From now on, the little dolphin had a home. With the mission complete, Henry handed Kate the fang of the little dolphin's mother, as promised. But looking into the dolphin's innocent eyes, Kate hesitated. A mother's influence on her child is profound. Kate, once a ruthless bounty hunter who would do anything for money, was now willing to give up her old ways for the little dolphin. She decided to join the sanctuary as a poorly paid volunteer, just to be with the little dolphin every day. Through this ordeal, both woman and beast found redemption. It was a pretty good ending after all. Previously, Ashley sacrificed herself to protect Helen, perishing alongside a mutated warrior from the Cabal. Despite the passage of time, Helen remains trapped in the grief of losing her daughter, haunted by dreams of Ashley's resurrection. This prolonged mourning has driven Helen to the brink of madness. Helen isn't the only one suffering. Will also lost his girlfriend in that battle. Although he is deeply saddened, he chooses to accept reality. However, Helen believes it's not yet time to mourn. After days of research, she becomes convinced that her daughter might still be alive despite the slim odds. Ashley had collided with the enemy into the force field, disintegrating instantly. Yet the force field's stability was questionable. It's possible that Ashley passed through it into a parallel world. Unlike Helen's obsessive denial, her ex-husband John takes a more straightforward approach. Enraged by the Cabal's role in his daughter's death, he storms their headquarters, killing every member of the central think tank. Unfortunately, the Cabal leader escapes. John tries to convince Helen to accept that their daughter is gone. He believes avenging Ashley is more tangible than clinging to baseless fantasies. Will scans the entire force field with a life detector, finding no signs of life. Even so, Helen refuses to give up. She theorizes that perhaps Ashley wasn't vaporized, but was instead thrown to an unknown location by the force field. She activates the life scanner, which runs for 6 days and nights, during which Helen barely sleeps. Will realizes that if this continues, Helen might collapse. He urges her to accept the truth. Then, unexpectedly, the scanner picks up something. Coordinates indicate a detection of Ashley's DNA in the basement. Following the coordinates, they indeed find a set of bones embedded in the wall. However, after comparison, the bones are identified as belonging to the mutated warrior who perished with Ashley. It seems Ashley is truly dead as a piece of shit. This outcome is disappointing, but Helen remains unwilling to give up, lost in her wild imaginations. Will finally loses patience. After countless scans and hopeless results, Helen eventually comes to terms with reality. They hold a belated funeral for Ashley. No body, no belongings, just an empty coffin. The team members place their favorite items in the coffin as a final farewell. When the coffin is closed, Helen can no longer contain her grief. Life is a train heading to the grave. There will be many stops along the way. It's hard for anyone to stay with you till the end. When someone gets off the train, even if it's hard to let go, you should be grateful and wave goodbye. Clinging to the past is tragic. Everyone else moves forward while you're left behind. Helen eventually lets go of everything, but John remains consumed by his desire for revenge. His continuous teleportation exacerbates his violent tendencies, and only relentless killing brings him temporary peace. The scene shifts to a man who is desperately fleeing from 2 Tesla bikers. The chase takes them from heaven to hell. Cornered in a dead-end alley, the man is out of options. That's when a turtle guy appears to flex his chubby figure before playing hero. This agile fat guy named himself the Adjuster and swiftly takes down the 2 bikers. Quick moves, stylish poses, and an adorable expression. Who could resist such a flying turtle? The bikers who got beaten up are none other than Will and his partner from the sanctuary. The person the Adjuster saved isn't just any regular Joe, but an alien in need of help. They're unsure whether this turtle guy is a friend or foe. Will ends up with dislocated joints all over his body. The pressing question remains, how did a turtle man without wings manage to fly? Elsewhere, Helen receives a tip about something strange unearthed at a construction site. The local government calls in the sanctuary. It seems they've found a giant egg, already cracked open with the creature inside nowhere to be found. The egg looks ancient, possibly laid before the city was built. As the city's temperature gradually warmed, the egg finally hatched. It's a reptile egg, and the foul-smelling viscous liquid inside resembles the tissue fluid of a giant insect. Where the creature went and whether it's dangerous is anyone's guess. The first worker who discovered the egg has fallen ill and taken sick leave, unreachable by phone or text. No one knows what he's encountered. Back to the Adjuster case. This turtle guy fancies himself a superhero, flaunting his skills everywhere. He recently saved a man from falling, albeit accidentally breaking 4 of his ribs in the process. It turns out the Adjuster is a Marvel fanatic, deeply engrossed in superhero comics. Wherever there's trouble, there he is. One day, the adjuster gets a tip about a fugitive breaking into a house. Fully geared, he arrives at the location, only to realize it's a trap set by Helen and her team. He shoots up into the air, but no matter how skilled, even he can't dodge a taser. Given his chubby size, he's an easy target. The adjuster is soft all over, except for his stubbornness. He believes Helen and her team are supervillains out to perform cruel experiments on him. No matter how they explain, he won't listen to their smelly bullshit. Test results show the adjuster isn't a mutant, he's just an ordinary human. So how does he fly? Will reluctantly breaks the harsh truth to the adjuster. Out of his 10 interventions, 8 were more of a hindrance than help. But the adjuster refuses to listen, convinced everyone is out to get him because of his comic book obsession. While Will's back is turned, the lab's alarm goes off. The adjuster has escaped, leaving the furry mutant down on the floor. On the other side, Helen is investigating the egg they previously found. Its structure is remarkably similar to a creature her father documented, a parasitic organism. Once hatched, these parasites immediately invade nearby humans, turning them into horrifying monsters. This explains why the first worker who found the egg is missing. He's likely become a host. This parasite is now hiding among humans, and its emergence could cause significant chaos. Henry activates the city's counter-terrorism network, and they finally pick up the creature's frequency in a garbage dump. There, they discover the mutilated body of the parasitized worker, his corpse eaten beyond recognition. It appears the creature has evolved and left its host, now on a killing spree. A curious head peeks out, and a man with a gun shouts for it to come out, but the creature is swift, vanishing in an instant. Turning to technician Henry, he analyzes earlier experimental data and makes a startling discovery. The adjuster's body is covered in countless tiny insects, enough to give anyone the creeps. These microscopic red bugs form his entire suit, enveloping him and granting him his extraordinary abilities. Meanwhile, the creature has already built a nest, preparing to spawn more offspring. They must find the adjuster quickly to help capture this monster. Helen tests the adjuster's blood sample and finds that he shares a symbiotic relationship with the parasites. They are draining his nutrients, leaving him weaker and unable to fly. Helen and her team bring the severely injured adjuster back to the sanctuary. His body is deteriorating rapidly. If this continues, he'll be reduced to a dried-out husk. The adjuster starts to open up about his connection with the suit. He was once an ordinary office worker until 8 days ago when he joined a company retreat in a remote forest for survival training. Clumsy and slow-witted, he got separated from his colleagues and fell into a cave where he encountered these strange bugs. Thousands of red insects enveloped him, forming a red suit. Overnight, the overlooked loser turned into a superhero. The adjuster tried to remove the suit, but no matter how he struggled, it wouldn't come off. On the upside, the suit absorbed his nutrients and moisture, sparing him from daily bodily functions. They've tried liquid nitrogen freezing, electric saws, and even explosives to remove the suit. But as long as the suit remains intact, the adjuster is being slowly tortured to death. The adjuster reflects that everyone's going to die eventually, but at least these red bugs make his death meaningful. His only wish now is to help as many people as possible in his limited time. Helen receives a call. They've located the creature's nest in an abandoned warehouse. They gear up immediately. The creature, immune to their weapons, quickly overpowers the team. Helen uses herself as bait to lure the monster into a trap. It seems like every powerful monster is a bit dim-witted. Just when they think they've restrained it, the creature regains consciousness in under a minute. Furious, the monster singles out Will, ignoring everyone else. With Will cornered, the adjuster crashes through a window to tackle the creature, but his punches are ineffective against the invulnerable beast. As the adjuster's strength wanes, Will and Henry use their weapons to distract the monster. Helen seizes the moment to operate a giant claw machine overhead, trapping the monster like a giant stuffed toy. After the battle, the adjuster is barely hanging on. They must remove the suit immediately. Unexpectedly, the red bugs sense the adjuster's impending death and detach themselves from his body. After 8 days of close contact, the adjuster and the bugs have developed a psychic connection. The bugs fulfilled his dream of becoming a superhero, but all good things must come to an end, and this dream is no different. The red bugs are locked away in a box, becoming new residents of the sanctuary. The sanctuary hosts thousands of residents, and just feeding them is a massive task. Henry introduces the newcomer Kate to their latest residents. Right then, Kate receives a call from her younger brother. A troublemaker, he recently borrowed money from the wrong people, and now loan sharks are after him. Unable to repay the debt, he turns to Kate for help. Desperate, Kate steals some alien fangs from the sanctuary, which are worth a fortune on the black market, more than enough to cover her brother's debt. However, the loan sharks want more. Knowing Kate works at the sanctuary, they pressure her to procure more aliens, even threatening her brother's life. The loan sharks set their sights on the sanctuary's lizard man and promise to wipe out the debt if Kate can deliver it. Surprisingly, Kate agrees without hesitation. Kate waits until the coast is clear and brings the loan sharks into the sanctuary. They are awestruck by what they see. Deep-sea mermaids, vengeful fire spirits. Each resident is worth a fortune on the black market. Kate leads them to a secret room, claiming it houses the creature they want. Unsuspecting, the loan sharks approach, only to be devoured by a lamprey lurking within. By eliminating the loan sharks, Kate not only kills 2 birds with 1 stone, but also saves on the sanctuary's feeding costs. A perfect outcome. When Helen learns of the incident, she doesn't blame Kate. After all, those scoundrels got what they deserved, and Kate was just protecting her family. In the end, the Adjuster makes a full recovery. This ordeal transforms him, and he emerges as a renowned comic book artist. He turns his story into a superhero comic, featuring everyone from the sanctuary. Rumor has it that a director is interested in adapting his comic into a live-action movie. The Adjuster receives a substantial sum for the rights, epitomizing the underdog's success. The scene shifts to Helen waking up from her piggy sleep one day when it's raining heavily outside, and even inside there's a light drizzle. The wind howls, and Helen can only tighten her thin clothes and step outside to avoid the rain. A strange halo surrounds Helen. She is bewildered. How could the city, which was perfectly fine just yesterday, turn into this ruin? Helen calls out for her colleagues amidst the debris. The scattered guns on the ground indicate that a gunfight has just taken place. Without time to think, she loads her weapon and starts searching for answers among the ruins. Rusty iron scraps cut her hand, and the smell of blood in the damp air attracts a lurking monster. This humanoid creature is immensely strong, roaring like a beast and pinning Helen's heavy body against a wall. To her horror, a long, mosquito-like proboscis emerges from its mouth, intending to give her a tongue massage. Just as it seems all is lost, a bullet flies out of nowhere, killing the monster. A group of people in gas masks appears, fully armed. They forcibly strip Helen and spray her with disinfectant, working with practiced efficiency. Helpless, Helen can only comply like livestock. After the disinfection, their leader finally shows up. To Helen's shock, it's her former colleague, Will. Once clean-cut and handsome, Will is now disheveled and menacing, with a chilling look in his one remaining eye. Helen wanted to exchange some greetings with him, but Will sneers, saying that Helen died 3 years ago. No matter how much she tries to explain, Will refuses to believe her. Helen never imagined they would reunite under such circumstances, nor that her old friend would aim a gun at her. While they argue, a horde of monsters, drawn by the scent, closes in. Despite their numbers, Will and his team fight wave after wave. During the battle, one of Will's teammates is bitten by a monster. Screaming in agony, he begs Will to show mercy, but Will doesn't hesitate. He knows these monsters are zombies. Once bitten, humans are infected with the zombie virus and turn into one of them. Over the years, Will has personally put down countless teammates, and his heart has grown cold. Meanwhile, Helen breaks free from her bindings. Stepping over the bodies, she searches for answers among the ruins. She stumbles upon a young girl who is starving and devouring expired canned food. The girl's family perished in this catastrophe. After eating, she falls into a deep sleep. Helen repairs the sanctuary's computer and logs into her account, finding a video she recorded 3 years ago. It reveals that 3 years ago, a zombie virus swept through the city and rapidly spread to surrounding areas. Helen, once hopeful, fell into despair. The sanctuary couldn't withstand the virus, and all the alien residents died in the onslaught. But Helen has no memory of this disaster for unknown reasons. Suddenly, Helen hears a noise in the corridor. Will staggers in, clutching his wounded abdomen, barely able to stand. He's the sole survivor of the recent battle, safe from zombification as his wound came from a grenade. Seeing that Helen means no harm, Will finally believes she is the real Helen. 3 years ago, the government abandoned the virus-ravaged city and dropped a nuclear bomb on its center, vaporizing 15,000 people instantly, with Helen among them. Since then, Will and his colleagues believed Helen was dead. Her sudden reappearance is hard for Will to process. Helen, too, is perplexed. She remembers exploring Central America just yesterday and now finds herself in an apocalypse. In this era of scarce resources, Helen's healthy, well-fed appearance is also suspicious. Will explains that 3 years ago, the virus attacked the world without warning. Within a year, millions were infected and died. The virus mutated, turning the infected into bloodthirsty zombies. They could infect any living creature, and once bitten, a person would turn in 5 hours. Today, fewer than 100,000 survivors remain globally, and they still haven't found the virus's source. Helen believes that finding the first infected person might offer a chance to reverse the situation. Just then, the survivor girl becomes very weak. It turns out she was bitten by a zombie. Will wants to end her suffering quickly, but Helen, feeling compassion, hopes they can find a way to save her within the crucial 5-hour window. Meanwhile, the zombie horde has already caught the faint scent of blood in the air and is roaring its way towards the sanctuary. Since Helen remembers nothing, she can only repeatedly watch her research data from 3 years ago, conducting experiments over and over again. The virus couldn't have appeared out of thin air. There must have been a first infected person. Yet after all these years, they still have no leads. The zombie horde launches an attack on the sanctuary. Helen and Will take up their weapons, fighting off wave after wave. Amidst the research data of the deceased, Helen finds a photo of her teammate Henry. Even Henry, a werewolf, hadn't been spared. Her former colleagues have all perished in the fight against the zombies. Suddenly, the familiar halo appears again. Helen is puzzled, wondering what exactly this halo is. Meanwhile, the survivor girl's condition worsens. The transformation into a zombie is a long and painful process, one Will has witnessed too many times. He doesn't believe the girl will survive. Helen suddenly recalls some fragments of memory. Years ago, she went to Honduras to find the tomb of the Mayan royalty. It was said that the Mayan monarchs were not ordinary people. Like Helen, they were immortal. Over time, the Mayan kings grew weary of their eternal lives and invented a potion to suppress their immortality. Since then, the Mayans vanished at an incredible speed, disappearing without a trace within decades. Helen speculates that the zombie virus might be the same as the one that destroyed the Mayans. Just then, the survivor girl screams in agony from the lab table. She has completed her transformation. Her long proboscis emits an ear-piercing screech. Will has no choice but to kill the survivor girl. The zombies hear the survivor girl's signal and start converging on the sanctuary from all directions. They are uniformed, disciplined. Helen and Will look down at the thousands of zombies below, at a loss for what to do. As the last safe haven is engulfed by darkness, they have no escape. Will reveals that he and Kate had a son. After Kate's death, Will left their 2-year-old child in a safe zone in the Arctic. He implores Helen to find his son if she survives. Saying this, Will picks up his gun and charges out of the lab without looking back, determined to buy Helen some time with his life. Helen turns on the computer and rewinds her notes to 3 years ago, before the disaster began. At that time, she was heading to the Mayan tomb in Honduras, seeking the potion to rid herself of immortality. The strange halo appears again. Helen finally remembers she was actually the first infected. The potion was the virus itself. Unknowingly, she had opened the bottle containing the potion and drank it to escape the curse of immortality. However, because she had injected vampire serum, her blood could neutralize all toxins, making her the virus carrier. She brought the virus to this city, single-handedly causing the apocalypse. Meanwhile, Will is exhausted outside and covered in wounds. In his final moments, he is overwhelmed by the zombies amidst his screams. The zombie horde, like a flood, breaks through the last barrier. Helen has nowhere to retreat, but then the environment around her starts to shift. The halo transports her to another world. She finds herself in the Mayan tomb in Honduras, clutching the bottle of potion. The halo morphs into a human shape, revealing itself as the ghost guarding the potion. The potion had caused the mighty Mayan Empire to vanish within decades. The ghost doesn't want humanity to repeat this cycle, so it brought Helen to the future to witness the apocalypse firsthand. Helen places the potion back in its original place, and the ghost resumes its mission. Back in reality, everything feels wonderful. The world is still sunny and bright, the sanctuary remains luxurious, and most importantly, all her teammates are alive. Will is as clear-eyed and handsome as ever. Helen doesn't share her extraordinary experience with Will. This trip to Honduras has left her deeply moved. The sun shines brightly outside, willows sway, and the cheerful chirping of birds fills the air. A gentle breeze brings the refreshing scent of greenery. Everything feels like a lifetime ago. The scene shifts to a woman who is on the phone with Henry. They are discussing the recent alien creatures they've been caring for. Suddenly, the woman's scream and the sound of an alien's roar come through the phone. Without wasting any time, Henry and two teammates rush to the lab of another scientist, Rachel. The lab is in complete disarray, the alien creature is gone, and Rachel is gravely injured, panic-stricken. A large claw mark is visible on her abdomen, oozing blood. Before long, Rachel loses consciousness. Henry is extremely anxious since he is Rachel's confidant. Clearly, the alien creature escaped its cell and attacked Rachel. Kate and Will find the escaped lizard man in a nearby warehouse, hiding behind some crates and muttering to itself. This tough-skinned creature took 4 tranquilizer darts to bring down. The lizard man is highly poisonous, its claws capable of releasing toxic spores. As a result, Rachel's condition is dire. Given Will's knowledge of the lizard man, this creature is typically very docile and never attacks humans unprovoked. Rachel is still unconscious, her wound deep and severely infected. Helen must operate on Rachel urgently. Scans reveal that Rachel's wounds are filled with toxic spores which are rapidly multiplying. The team can only try to remove as many spores from the wound as possible. Meanwhile, Will and Kate bring the lizard man back to the refuge. Considering its violent behavior, the creature might be locked up for life. To understand what truly happened, Henry reviews the holographic footage from the scene. The tech at the refuge is so advanced it rivals that of the FBI. Henry reconstructs the scene based on the holographic evidence. With Rachel's life hanging by a thread, Henry is distraught. As a werewolf, he struggles to control his transformations, and Rachel is the only one outside his colleagues who accepts him as he is. Just when it seems like Henry and Rachel might share more than friendship, Rachel's husband arrives at the refuge. Rachel's blood pressure is dropping, and though they have removed most of the spores, the remaining ones have already spread throughout her body, multiplying beyond control. Even a miracle couldn't save her now. Almost despairing, the husband is faced with the reality of losing Rachel. Since he is a scientist with some knowledge of the lizard man, Helen asks the man to provide his research data in hopes of creating an inhibitor to slow the spore division. Initially hesitant, fearing the inhibitor might destroy Rachel's organs and kill her faster, the husband ultimately decides to take the risk. On the other side, Will and Kate recreate the incident. They believe the sequence of events went like this. Rachel was on the phone when the lizard man broke through the glass, attacked her, and then escaped through the window. This seems the most plausible explanation, but Will feels something is off because many details don't line up with their theory. With Rachel unconscious and the lizard man unable to speak human language, Henry is left questioning the creature, trying to understand why it would harm Rachel, who had been so kind to it. The lizard man seems desperate, unable to defend itself. Watching this, you can't help but feel sorry for the poor creature as it sits there in a daze, drugged heavily to keep it subdued. Consumed with anger, Rachel's husband storms into the cell with a gun, firing at the lizard man before it can explain. Henry rushes in to stop him, preventing the lizard man from being riddled with bullets. Fortunately, the creature's bulletproof skin keeps it from serious harm. No one has ever survived an attack from the lizard man, so the husband's reaction is understandable. Though impulsive, the husband's research proves useful. Helen administers the inhibitor to the spores from the lizard man, and under the microscope, the toxic spores quickly lose their vitality. If used correctly, the inhibitor can kill the spores without harming the host, much like chemotherapy for cancer. Even now, Will is puzzled, not knowing why such a gentle creature would suddenly attack Rachel, who had cared for it for 4 years. Meanwhile, Henry is trying to calm Rachel's husband. The man is furious, shouting that his wife is dying while the murderer gets to eat and drink well. Henry is at a loss for words and can only keep an eye on the impulsive man to prevent him from doing anything rash. Henry and Rachel have been working closely together for 4 years, both dedicated to caring for the lizard man. Though they've developed feelings for each other, they've never crossed the hormone line. Rachel's husband has never made an issue of it, making their trio's relationship both delicate and awkward. The tormented lizard man cowers in the corner, trembling to wet its skins, not pants. Will attempts to communicate with it across species. It extends its hand, making eating motions, trying to convey something to Will. But Will misunderstands the entire time, causing the lizard man to grow agitated and even knock over its bowl before retreating back to the corner to wet its bulletproof skins. Henry and Kate review photos from the scene and discover that Rachel was trying to inject the lizard man with adrenaline before the attack. This is puzzling. Rachel treated the lizard man like her own child. If the lizard man had truly gone berserk, she could have used a tranquilizer gun. Why go for adrenaline? It turns out the lizard man is usually gentle and non-toxic, but their habitat contains a deadly spore that can only be suppressed with adrenaline. This explains why the lizard man tried to escape its cage. It was exposed to the toxic spores. Realizing this, Rachel had tried to inject it with adrenaline to help suppress the spores. Rachel's husband doesn't buy this explanation. He believes the lizard man attacked his wife because it's a monster by nature, a carnivorous alien that can never be tamed. The husband admits he's always had some resentment, feeling Rachel spends more time with Henry and the lizard man than with him. But this doesn't shake his love for her. It's clear he deeply loves his wife. The good news is that Rachel's condition has stabilized after medication. This is a huge relief for both her husband and Henry. However, just as they start to feel hopeful, Rachel's condition takes a sudden turn for the worse. Her husband is nearly in tears outside the window. Fortunately, after a frantic effort, Helen manages to pull Rachel back from the brink once again. Rachel's condition is improving, but they can't afford to let their guard down. At this moment, Will brings news that the lizard man's adrenaline levels are higher than normal. Will recalls the lizard man making eating motions, suggesting someone tampered with its food. Meanwhile, the husband remains by Rachel's bedside, reminiscing about their honeymoon. Henry, however, insists on being a third wheel, further angering the husband. With just the three of them, the husband begins venting about the past 4 years of Henry's ambiguous relationship with Rachel. He accuses Henry of always interrupting their private moments, and Rachel spending more time with him than her own husband. It turns out the husband had secretly added toxic spores to the lizard man's food, hoping it would kill Henry. He never intended for Rachel to get hurt, but now, with no one else around, he pulls out a knife he's been hiding. Instead of a quick kill, he stabs Henry repeatedly, avoiding vital organs in order to provoke Henry's werewolf nature and force him to live as a beast. Henry doesn't fight back, continually explaining he's not even the same species as his wife and they're innocent. Helen rushes in with a gun to stop the husband, who doesn't care anymore. His wife's condition has driven him mad with jealousy. Suddenly, Rachel starts convulsing. Seizing the moment of distraction, they manage to subdue the crazed husband. The good news is Rachel wakes up, and the ordeal finally ends. Henry realizes that his closeness with Rachel has inadvertently damaged her family. He suggests keeping his distance, but Rachel disagrees. She has long fallen for Henry and now has an excuse to be with him after what her husband did. Henry rejects Rachel's advances. He can't bring himself to get involved with his friend's wife. Despite their mutual feelings, they're destined never to be together. After all, they're from different species and their values don't align. The scene shifts to the sanctuary team detecting a signal from the Gulf of Mexico. It's an extremely rare alien known as the giant vampire squid. At Helen's request, Will cancels all his plans and takes a helicopter to the abandoned oil rig. The vampire squid is quite docile, and they manage to get it into a large container without much trouble. Cephalopods, lacking bones, can squeeze into containers much smaller than their body size. After a brief stop on the rig, they continue their flight back. Unexpectedly, the previously docile squid becomes agitated. Its enormous GPS tentacles break through the metal box, and then the cabin itself. Now, suspended in midair with no way out, the squid's rampage continues. Alarms blare in the cockpit until the helicopter finally plunges into the deep drilling well. Fortunately, Will is a strong swimmer and manages to stay afloat as the helicopter gets entangled in steel cables, giving them a dry place to stand. Looking up at the unreachable well opening, they start blaming each other. Worst of all, the container holding the squid has been breached, meaning the vampire squid is now in the water with them. Terrified, Will climbs back into the helicopter while Helen tries to call for help through the radio, but the steel and concrete block any signal. The well is about 10 miles deep, and as the cables holding the helicopter start to give way, a thinner steel cable snaps first, causing the helicopter to tilt and both of them to fall into the water. Perhaps Helen's intel was wrong. This squid is not as gentle as they thought and might even be dangerous. As they argue if something has provoked its aggression, they fail to notice the squid swimming beneath them. Feeling the underwater currents, Will desperately swims back to the helicopter, only to be pulled down by the squid. Tangled in multiple tentacles, he struggles to break free, surfacing only to be dragged down again. Helen, in a panic, uses a knife to sever one of the squid's tentacles, causing it to temporarily release Will. This is Helen's first encounter with a creature attacking humans in her 150-plus years of life, perhaps because Will is just that annoying. Furious, Will threatens to turn the squid into calamari rings with tartar sauce. Helen, however, becomes even more excited by the squid's unusual behavior and wants to capture it for study, determined to understand its violent tendencies. After all, humans can reincarnate, but a lost squid is gone forever. She dismantles the helicopter's cables to prepare for capturing the squid. Meanwhile, the injured squid circles the helicopter, seeking revenge and occasionally ramming it, causing loud bangs. Helen devises a new plan. She instructs Will to stay out of the water while she tosses the cable into the water, electrocuting the squid and forcing it to retreat temporarily. However, this only angers the squid further, and it will soon return with a vengeance. With the helicopter's battery depleted, they can only hope their teammates find them soon. Unable to send an SOS signal, Helen suggests they dive to the bottom of the well to investigate what could have triggered the squid's aggression. The helicopter's structure is mostly intact, so they might be able to repair it. Helen reveals this isn't her first time being trapped underwater, referencing an incident from April 14, 1912, which shocks Will as he begins to understand. They plan to unblock the well's ventilation system to restore power to the drilling rig. Since the squid seems to particularly dislike Will, he stays on the helicopter to distract it while Helen dives into the depths of the well. She struggles to open the ventilation valve, but gets trapped by the powerful suction. As she fights to free herself, she risks drowning. In the nick of time, Will jumps into the water to rescue her, and after a fierce struggle, he manages to bring the near-unconscious Helen to the surface. Although the ventilation system is fixed, they almost lost their lives. With electricity restored, Helen intends to use the well's cables to repair the helicopter's communication system and send out a distress signal. Will mentions his plans for the day, which included a date with an intelligent and charming fangirl. Helen, however, insisted on this mission, disrupting his hormone plans. Despite their frequent disagreements, they share a mentor-mentee relationship. Unlike an upset fangirl who can be appeased by his muscles, angering Helen could cost Will his job. After some effort, the damaged communication system was finally repaired. Using the last bit of power, Helen sent out a distress signal to the outside world. As soon as the signal was sent, the battery was completely drained. Now all they could do was hope that the rescue team would receive their distress signal as soon as possible. After all, their food and fresh water were running low, and they wouldn't survive much longer here. Just then, Helen noticed some strange slime seeping from the surface of the aircraft. Adult squids aren't supposed to produce slime, which suggests that something else might be hiding inside the plane. Helen tapped on the outside twice and got a response from inside the engine. Cautiously, they opened the engine cover only to be knocked back. They didn't know where this giant scorpion came from. Helen quickly locked the cover back into place. This was a sea scorpion, another very rare creature. It had been hiding on the drilling platform and sneaked into the plane's engine while they were busy capturing the squid, which had driven the normally docile squid into a frenzy at high altitude, leading to the crash. Squids and sea scorpions are natural enemies, and when they meet, a fast and furious fight to the death is inevitable. The sea scorpion, being an amphibian, can't swim and is no match for the squid in water. The sea scorpion kept chasing Will for some unknown reason. Both creatures seemed to despise him. The scorpion crawled all over the plane, clearly wanting to eat Will. Its movements finally attracted the vampire squid, which had been biding its time. The squid and the scorpion fought fiercely around the plane. Will, trying to assist, accidentally injured the squid. Sensing things weren't going well, the scorpion retreated back into the engine. They hurriedly locked the engine compartment again, knowing full well it wouldn't hold the scorpion for long. To avoid the squid, they planned to make the plane sink to the bottom of the water with the scorpion inside. Whatever grudge they had, they could settle it underwater. The plan was simple, just cut the few steel cables holding the plane. But with the tiny flame in Will's hand, it would take forever. The scorpion was clever and seemed to sense their plan, becoming restless in the engine room. It finally burst out again, trying to eat Will and his smelly parts. At that moment, any movement would trigger an attack from the scorpion. Will was too scared to move. Just then, the squid and the scorpion met again, fighting fiercely on the plane. The squid was no match for the nimble and vicious scorpion. No matter how hard the squid fought, it wouldn't touch the water. Observing the battle, they realized that as long as the scorpion was on the plane, the squid couldn't win. After all, in every encounter over the centuries, the squid was always the one being eaten. Helen noticed that the scorpion had just punctured the fuel tank, and fuel was slowly leaking into the water. She mustered her courage, took out a flare from the first aid kit, and threw it at the ruptured fuel tank. With the ensuing explosion, the plane sank to the bottom along with the scorpion. The centuries-old battle finally had a victor. With the crisis resolved, Will started planning his date with his fangirl again, but the explosion had also destroyed their food and supplies. Now, the question was how they would get out. Helen said the plane explosion was the best signal flare they could have. She told Will to hang in there and leave the rest to fate. The scene shifts to a pitch-black night when a couple stopped to help with a luxury car that had flipped into a ditch. The driver had a steering rod pierced through his heart and was long dead. The kind-hearted man hurriedly asked his wife to call 911, but when he turned back, the driver's body had mysteriously vanished. Terrified, the man heard eerie sounds coming from the surrounding bushes. The next morning, Will and Helen arrived at the scene. The kind-hearted man from the previous night had been torn to shreds, a gruesome sight. Nearby lay his wife's body, covered in bite marks from some wild animal, her eyes wide open in death. It seemed the couple had tried to help the driver, only to meet a tragic end. But from the condition of the car, it was clear the driver had died on the spot. So where had his body gone? The missing driver, Darren, was a 24-year-old rich kid. His classmate from another wealthy family had also disappeared with him. If it was a kidnapping, why hadn't there been any ransom demands? The case was full of mysteries, leaving Helen and Will at a loss. Elsewhere on the other side of the city, Darren and his classmate were alive and well. They first found Darren's girlfriend. Seeing her boyfriend alive, the girl was almost in tears with joy. Darren, however, said he was no longer the person he used to be and suddenly shot his girlfriend. However, the girl came back to life, her eyes black and soulless. It turned out all three had become undead. Back at the sanctuary, Will was still clueless about the three missing rich kids, but he discovered they had all visited a clinic in Mexico for drug rehab. This clinic was expensive, out of reach for ordinary people. Without delay, Helen and Will set off for the mysterious clinic in Mexico. The clinic was run by a doctor who turned out to be Tesla, the charming and infamous villain. A genius, Tesla had changed his name and opened a rehab clinic in Mexico after a big battle with the Cabal. Tesla believed a little electric shock could straighten out any rebellious kid. He had quite a knack for it. The once drug-addicted rich kids left his clinic full of energy. Under Helen's interrogation, Tesla confessed that his new treatment involved injecting his own blood into the rich kids. Tesla, the immortal vampire king, had blood that could neutralize any toxin. But things went awry, turning those rich kids into evil vampires. Meanwhile, Darren and his group were busy expanding their vampire army. They killed friends who had also undergone the blood transfusion at the clinic. After 2 gunshots, these friends would instantly transform into vampires. The feeling of rebirth was exhilarating. Tesla had created a disaster, producing a batch of rebellious killers with an insatiable thirst for blood. Realizing their immortality, these kids had even more terrifying ambitions. Now, Darren wanted to create a vast vampire army, subjugate all humanity, and become the world's overlord. The thought thrilled him. Tesla had underestimated these brats' wild ambitions, and he was furious. He was the vampire king. No one could usurp his throne. Meanwhile, far away in the city center, Darren suddenly realized that only those injected with Tesla's serum could transform into vampires after death. While Tesla was still pondering how to deal with these unruly brats, Darren and his crew showed up at his doorstep. These brats seemed to have no respect for their elders. Tesla, infuriated by their arrogance, transformed instantly. A brawl broke out between both sides. One moment, Tesla was striking a pose, and the next, he was knocked out cold by a speeding Tesla car powered by gas, not battery. The old man failed to maintain his cool and was kidnapped by the brats. Fortunately, it was an even trade, as Helen and her team managed to capture the vampire girl. Even in captivity, Tesla refused to relinquish his superior demeanor. Once, this superior race could make all humanity tremble with a single breath. Tesla indeed wished to revive the vampire race, but also knew that unrestrained vampires would be a catastrophic disaster for the world. Trying to act as the wise elder, he attempted to persuade the young ones to give up. However, these spoiled rich kids didn't buy his smelly bullshit. So, Tesla was thrown from the 40th floor to the 1st floor by the brats. Feeling utterly powerless, Tesla realized he had no choice but to join them. They needed his diabetic blood to create more vampires. Strapped to an electric chair, they nearly sucked him dry. Becoming vampires enhanced their physical abilities and even their intelligence. These seemingly ignorant rich kids had a surprising amount of medical knowledge, able to comprehend complex medical notes with ease. Tesla felt utterly outmatched. Meanwhile, Helen and her team injected the vampire girl with a sedative. Still arrogant, the girl boasted about wiping out Helen's sanctuary soon. These young vampires didn't realize they had become monsters. Will tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen with her vampire brain. However, her arrogance called for a lesson. Kate, armed with silver bullets soaked in holy tap water, was ready to ensure any creature would be reduced to ashes. Terrified, the vampire girl quickly lost her arrogance. Helen analyzed her DNA, revealing that Tesla had played with fire. These young vampires were faster, stronger, and deadlier than Tesla himself. Ordinary methods were useless against them. However, Tesla had a backup plan, a device capable of purifying vampire genes, hidden in the most secluded wine cellar of the shelter. Helen, after opening a bottle of Bordeaux, finally found the small device. Simple as it seemed, she wondered if it could really work. Meanwhile, Tesla, captured and full of resentment, felt betrayed by his own actions. The once free-spirited old man had been outsmarted by these brats who stole his research and shattered his dreams, turning them into nightmares. Darren, coolly saying "see him next century," implied their intent to kill Tesla once they were done with him. Trying to avoid immediate danger, Tesla feigned cooperation, offering his help despite his age and weakness. Killing a vampire by staking the heart only worked in movies. Decapitation was the real deal. Yet these strong brats were nearly invincible. In a desperate move, Tesla hoped his device would work. Helen and her team infiltrated the vampire's lair, expecting to find Tesla in a miserable state. Instead, he was sipping wine and chatting happily with Darren. Helen felt a deep sense of betrayal. As they entered, they were immediately captured. Helen, furious, vowed never to rescue Tesla again. Indifferent, he sipped his wine, saying it felt good to be king again. His elegance was infuriating. As his captors slept, Tesla snuck into the secret room, revealing his act was just a ruse. Without his performance, Helen and her team would have been dead. His long acquaintance with Helen, spanning over a century, had its limits, but he had his principles. Retrieving the gadget from Helen's clothing, he activated the anti-vampire device. Fueled by his own electricity, Tesla sought revenge on the brats who had humiliated him. He swiftly neutralized the sexy vampire girl, turning her back into a human. Next were Darren's classmate and his crew. Despite his exhaustion, Tesla managed to purify them with the help of Helen's team, who had broken free and joined the fight. However, the most formidable Darren refused to surrender, taking Kate hostage. In the ensuing struggle, Tesla managed to insert the device into Darren's furry chest. Even as he died, Darren dragged Tesla down with him, transforming Tesla back into a human as well. Once a mighty vampire, Tesla now felt defeated. The irreversible effect of the purification device left him as a mere human. Helen, unable to stand the sight of her old friend in despair, tried various methods to revert him but failed. Tesla's dream of ruling the world was shattered. Yet living a peaceful, ordinary life might not be so bad. Raising his glass in a toast to the once glorious vampire race, Tesla discovered he could still manipulate metal objects. He had transformed into a more powerful being, akin to Magneto. The scene shifts to a ship catching fire and exploding hundreds of miles away. Helen and her team scramble to care for the injured. To save more shitty lives, Helen calls in her ex-husband John, who can teleport instantly with no worries of losing his hair. Using his power, he repeatedly braves the flames to transport survivors to the sanctuary. Over a century ago, John was injected with a vampire serum, granting him immortality and teleportation abilities. However, this power has a side effect. Each teleport increases his violent tendencies. When he reaches his limit, he becomes a bloodthirsty killer. As he gazes at the young couple he just saved, a cold, fierce look flashes in his eyes. After a night of intense rescue efforts, most of the injured are stabilized. Henry is tinkering with his new invention in the lab, a powerful railgun. No alien creature can survive its might. Meanwhile, a refugee is exploring the sanctuary, finding everything new and fascinating. She encounters John and repeatedly thanks him in the local language for saving her life. But John struggles to suppress his bloodthirsty urges. The woman, sensing his inner darkness and fear, tries to persuade him to let down his guard and integrate into the family. Her incessant chatter angers John, who believed that she had a path to heaven but chose to storm into hell. Half an hour later, Henry and Kate discover her body, throat slashed brutally. John quickly became the suspect. Helen, who has shared a bed with John for over a century, can't remember how many times they've pointed guns at each other. Once an idealist with a heart for the greater good, John's bloodlust increased with his teleportation powers. Over a century ago, he killed 6 street prostitutes in London, becoming the feared Jack the Ripper. Helen believed he had reformed over the years, only to see him relapse so quickly. The couple's argument escalates into a fierce fight. John, resorting to domestic violence, shows no mercy to his ex-wife. Helen, long accustomed to his assaults, pulls out her trusty dagger. In a critical moment, Kate intervenes. Helen, taking advantage of John's distraction, draws her railgun. No alien creature can survive its power. Yet, even in his final moments, John tries to stab his ex-wife with a dagger. With his body still warm, Helen hesitates but decides to push him into the operating room. John is inherently kind, merely overpowered by his darker side. She sets the defibrillator to maximum power. After a desperate battle, John's heart starts beating again. However, this overloads the sanctuary's power grid, causing a massive blackout. Henry has to reboot the system. John's kind personality returns, but Helen no longer believes he can truly reform. She locks him in a cell. John insists he has tried hard to control his dark side, but Helen trusts not a single punctuation mark. Strangely, since John's revival, the sanctuary has experienced many odd events. A telepathic survivor keeps screaming about a terrifying presence. Unable to understand the language, Will is clueless. Suddenly, the entire sanctuary seems to come alive. Lab and cell doors slam shut, and even the elevator halts. Will and Henry are trapped in the lab, Kate and the furry mutant in the elevator. The worst off is Helen, trapped in a cell with the man who just tried to kill her. John calmly unlocks his handcuffs. At this moment, Helen is in grave danger. Henry mentions the sanctuary's lockdown might just be a system glitch. Seeing her ex-husband free, Helen panics, pointing a gun at him. She sings defiantly, having cut off all escape routes. Henry attempts all commands, but the lockdown system remains unresponsive. Now, 6 people are trapped in 3 different locations, with their signals jammed. They can't even call for help and couldn't figure out why the system failed suddenly. Luckily, the furry mutant repairs the oldest communication system in the elevator, re-establishing contact with all teammates. Meanwhile, John, kneeling with his bald head, tells Helen that he senses a dark force invading the sanctuary. This dark force is the bloodthirsty side of his own nature. Earlier, Helen's attempt to revive John caused a surge of energy, overloading the system. This powerful energy forced his dark side into the electrical system. In other words, John's dark side has taken control of the sanctuary's systems, aiming to kill everyone inside. To verify John's theory, Helen remotely instructs Henry and Will via the intercom to set the defibrillator to maximum power and direct it at the distribution box. The same scene replays, sparks fly, and a strange shadow emits a ghostly blue glow darting around the room. This is John's dark consciousness. Though it has no physical form, it is extremely malevolent. Soon, it will be able to control the entire sanctuary. Energy beings, like viruses, can parasitize anything. Their plan is to shut down the power and reboot the system, hoping to regain temporary control. However, the reboot switch is in the basement, and everyone is currently trapped. Only Kate and the furry mutant stuck in the elevator have a chance. They pry open the elevator hatch and decide to head to the basement via the shaft. Meanwhile, Will discovers a ventilation duct in the operating room that also leads outside. The group splits into 2 teams, each seeking their own exit. The dark side seems to realize their plan and grows stronger. It first activates the furnace connected to the ventilation duct, causing a blaze inside. Next, it starts up the malfunctioning elevator, which begins to rise slowly. Kate, seeing the elevator about to crush her, retreats into the car. The elevator then plummets uncontrollably. Simultaneously, things are not going well for Will either. Fire snakes into the ventilation duct. Just in the nick of time, technician Henry successfully hacks into the system and remotely shuts down the furnace, saving Will from being roasted. The next step is to activate the emergency brake system for the elevator. Kate and the furry mutant narrowly avoid being crushed. While Henry is feeling smug, the dark side hatches a new plan. It controls a robotic arm to retrieve all the hazardous and toxic materials from the storage, attempting to concoct a deadly gas. The dark side regains control. Henry, out of options, can only hope Will can manually reboot the system quickly. Staring at the sparking breaker, Will manages to press the reboot button, electrocuting himself in the process. The system reboots, power is restored, and they seem to have succeeded. With the dark side gone, John returns to his kind and gentle self. But now, the dark side has retreated to the lab, its last stronghold. It shuts the door and continues mixing the toxic gas using the robotic arm. No one can get in. Knowing the dark side won't stop, John realizes only his teleportation can save the day. In a flash, John teleports into the lab. He extends his hand and merges with the dark side once more. In a flash of light, John collapses and passes out. When John wakes up, his violent persona has returned. Over the years, he has tried to restrain his evil side, but still cannot stop killing. He doesn't know where to go, but staying away from Helen is the best protection for her. John bids Helen a painful farewell and disappears in a flash. Helen is filled with mixed emotions, unsure when they will meet again. The scene shifts to a man gently opening his stinky mouth and releasing a large spider. This is not an ordinary spider. Its electromagnetic resonance causes the earth to tremble. The man places the spider inside a statue, hides the statue, and runs in the opposite direction. However, he doesn't get far before being intercepted by a gang boss and his group. Their objective is simple. They want the man's spider. Once separated from its host, the spider will die soon. The gang boss, unable to extract any information from the man, shoots him and sends him to meet Satan. Meanwhile, all the creatures in the London sanctuary start behaving restlessly. This phenomenon is not limited to London. Similar disturbances occur in branches in Tokyo, Sydney, and other locations. These anomalies are sudden and unprovoked. Helen convenes a video meeting with leaders from various units. They suspect it might be a virus or a precursor to a natural disaster. The representative from India reports that a man was recently murdered in the slums of Mumbai by unknown assailants. This man was reportedly not an ordinary human, but a prophet capable of predicting natural and human disasters. They suspected that the victim might be connected to the recent anomalies. Will and Kate take a flight to Mumbai. At the scene, they notice that the killer's footprints indicate expensive shoes, suggesting they are wealthy. But why would a group of wealthy individuals target a slum resident? Will discovers fingerprints on a pillar, and after some investigation, a statue is revealed. Local residents have never seen this statue before. Will, without much thought, brings the statue back to the sanctuary. Despite careful observation, he finds nothing unusual and discards it aside, unaware that a large spider crawls out of the statue and into his clothes. Exhausted, Will sleeps deeply that night. The spider quietly emerges and enters his stomach, intending to have a spider baby with him. The next morning, Will feels unusually tired and weak, attributing it to jet lag. The autopsy of the man who was killed reveals he was an ordinary human, but his DNA indicates he was over 200 years old. Curiously, since Will swallowed the large spider, the tsunamis and anomalies have gradually subsided. Yet, Helen still doesn't understand what caused these natural disasters. Just recently, the Chinese meteorological station detected an electromagnetic pulse signal. Henry traced the signal and found its origin in Mumbai. Meanwhile, Will feels increasingly weak. Kate jokingly suggests that he must have eaten something bad, noting that even she struggles with the local food. Will leaves Kate, intending to take a nap. As he stumbles through an alley, he experiences a hallucination, seeing a beautiful figure in the distance. The woman's figure quickly disappears, and Will collapses. In his dream, Will finds himself in a strange, ancient palace. The blue-clad woman he longs for appears silently behind him. She asks where he had been, and she had been looking for him. Will is confused. He has never seen this sexy woman before, but feels an inexplicable closeness to her. As he contemplates and recalls, he falls into a deeper sleep. When Will wakes up, he is in the home of an old woman in the slums. She tells him that his weakness is because he has become the host for the Makri spider. The Makri spider is a deity in their religion, parasitizing their ancestors for centuries. In the distant deep sea lives a giant spider named Big Bertha, capable of using electromagnetic resonance to manipulate tectonic plates, causing tsunamis, earthquakes, and raising sea levels, leading to global disasters. However, even such a powerful spider has a weakness. The Makri spider is very fragile and can only live inside a human body, making it nearly extinct. The two spiders can establish a mental link, meeting in dreams and forming a deep bond. The old woman's tribe uses the parasitic Makri spider to predict various disasters. Not long ago, a gang led by the gang boss discovered this secret and sought to steal the Makri spider for his gang's use. The prophet hid the Makri spider in the statue, which Will unknowingly consumed. The old woman excitedly declares that the Makri spider chose Will, marking him with great honor. The blue-clad sexy woman in Will's dream is the giant spider in disguise, explaining why he felt such a connection to her. Upon receiving the news, the gang boss and his men tracked Will down. Will, who was as defenseless as a chicken man, was soon captured and taken to the lab. They strung up this delicate chicken for roasting. The gang boss explained that he was a wealthy and influential rich kid who had spent his life seeking rare treasures. Controlling the Makri spider would mean controlling its wife, Big Bertha, and thus the entire world. Using low-frequency magnetic pulses, the gang boss subjected Will to a relentless barrage, Will, having been tortured this badly before, was somewhat accustomed to it. After a few seconds of convulsions came a long period of calm. Unable to bear the torture, the Macri spider emerged from Will's mouth to the gang boss's immense excitement. He eagerly swallowed the spider, adjusted his hair, and waited to meet the sexy woman from his dreams. The old lady remarked that only a host chosen by the Macri spider could establish a mental link with Big Bertha. Clearly, the gang boss wasn't ready. Meanwhile, Big Bertha, unable to contact the Macri spider, grew increasingly agitated, releasing a powerful magnetic storm that disrupted the sanctuary's signals, causing them to lose Big Bertha's coordinates. Elsewhere, the gang boss knew he couldn't stay long. He abandoned Will, taking the old lady and departing. Kate arrived with her team, only to find Will in convulsions due to the residual spider venom in his body, fluctuating between madness and a deep coma. Meanwhile, the gang boss dispatched his fleet towards Big Bertha's oceanic domain. Throughout the journey, he meditated, attempting to establish a mental link with Big Bertha, but to no avail. Big Bertha, losing patience, stomped lightly, causing the entire ocean to tremble. Though the Macri spider was gone, the residual venom occasionally allowed Will to see Big Bertha's mental image. Big Bertha gently called out to Will in his dreams, but the connection was intermittent, causing Will immense pain. After a long period of meditation, the gang boss finally arrived at Big Bertha's palace only to find it deserted. Despite his efforts, he couldn't meet it. The old lady sneered, saying that only when chosen by the Macri spider would the creature appear. The gang boss, with his evil and violent nature, could never become a prophet or control Big Bertha. Kate found the old lady's tribe. They explained that once a mental bond is established, even without the Macri spider, Will could still connect with Big Bertha, though the link would be weak. Will would need to perform a TikTok dance for Big Bertha to strengthen it. But in his current state, even jumping rope was a struggle. Will dreamed of Big Bertha again. She was radiant and sexy, fitting his every aesthetic. Without a second thought, he stripped naked, wanting to enjoy a hot bath with her. Big Bertha playfully scolded him for not contacting her sooner and asked where he had been. As Will pondered how to comfort her using his naked muscles, the gang boss's meditation interrupted, summoning Big Bertha. She was compelled to walk away, disappearing from Will's dream. Before leaving, she told Will that TikTok dancing would call her back. Will awoke, pants down, realizing he had to dance for the creature. At this moment, he had only one thought. He couldn't let Big Bertha fall into the hands of an evil man. Due to the Macri spider's refusal to cooperate, the gang boss lost patience and decided to force it with low-frequency pulses. Sensing the spider's pain, Big Bertha entered a rampage, spreading magnetic storm waves. The frenzied Will felt the creature's anger, his head splitting in pain. He screamed about the impending apocalypse, floods, tsunamis, and earthquakes in the crowd. Big Bertha's power was enough to destroy the world. Intense tectonic activity caused numerous islands to emerge, with sonar showing rapidly separating plates. Helen, at a loss, ordered the lizard man to stay put, fearing further angering the creature. However, the lizard man had his own agenda, deeming Helen unfit to lead and plotting to overthrow her. Secretly, he prepared to deploy deep-water bombs. Those who comply will thrive, those who resist will perish. If the giant spider wouldn't obey, killing it would be simpler. As the situation grew dire, Will remembered Big Bertha's instructions from his dream, urging him to dance. This was like an Indian movie. No matter your race, you had to dance here. As Will danced in TikTok style, he genuinely attracted Big Bertha. The gang boss's attempt to usurp failed, and he was furious. Helen seized the moment, using sonic weapons against his fleet, knocking them unconscious. This bought Will some time. He pleaded with Big Bertha to stop the magnetic storms, lest millions perish. He added that getting angry would lead to dull skin and wrinkles, and anger would make her ugly. Big Bertha's mood stabilized by hearing his flirting words. She simply wished for humans to stop disturbing her and her husband, the Macri spider. Big Bertha finally calmed down, much to Will and Helen's delight. However, the lizard man defied orders, launching several deep-water bombs. Despite promises not to disturb the spider couple, humans reneged. The lizard man not only broke their word, but also detained Helen and Henry, stripping her of her leadership. Dark forces rose again, and Big Bertha's wrath could destroy the world. She climbed a lone island, unleashing a heart-wrenching roar. Her stomp caused a nuclear resonance, raising 100-mile-high waves, making the entire world tremble. And with that, Season 2 of this drama concludes.